Thank you, and welcome back to the Patriots 300 level podcast. My name is Eric, and I'm joined by my co-host Kevin. Welcome back for our 82nd episode this week, where we'll be recapping another Patriots humiliating loss to the Miami Dolphins and previewing their upcoming game versus the Indianapolis Colts. As a reminder, you can follow us on Twitter/X and Instagram at Pats 300 level pod for up-to-the-minute updates and commentary on news of the day. Kevin, I know that going into this this last stretch, I'd say the previous six games we were saying that a good with good fundamental coaching, this is a stretch where the Patriots realistically could have won all those games, including the game next week. Hopefully, with good coaching, you'd think realistically probably wins out of seven, with the Dolphins being one of them. Where earlier in the season you lost to them in a close game. Granted, they didn't have Tua, and you had Jacoby, but again, that was a game where Miami, you could see some flaws in their team, and you would think maybe the second time you play them, you'd have a better shot. Again, it was in Miami, but this game just didn't appear anything like that. Miami from the get-go just had full control of the game, and they completely embarrassed the Patriots. They embarrassed them from a playing standpoint, from a coaching standpoint. Whereas in the first game, both coaching was horrendous. This game, you were completely outcoached. What were your thoughts and your immediate takeaways from watching that game?
I thought it was a complete and utter disaster, and something where we titled the episode this year, "Have the Patriots hit rock bottom?" And I can't remember what game that was
I
because
think
there's
that was
been
after
so
the
many.
Jacksonville game.
Yeah, I was gonna say maybe the Jacksonville game. There's been so many instances this year of them performing not to expectations, and this was probably the worst game they've had this year, and especially from a coaching and execution standpoint, you can't have that mental penalties and say, "Oh, it's just we don't have the roster, we don't have the talent." At some point, it's the coaching where
Yeah.
false starts is the coaching and penalties is coaching. You can coach that out of someone. It's not ability at this point. It's they're not getting the right coaching, and it starts from the top down. It starts from Gerard Mayo, and it goes down to the offensive and defensive coordinator, and it goes down to the positional coaches there, and it makes you really wonder. And we've wondered this pretty much from the beginning of the year, but what's it going to continue to look like? How are they going to get better? They haven't looked better. If anything, they've regressed throughout the year.
Yeah.
Where you would say their best games this year were the Bengals and the Seahawks game. And what do those all have in
The Bears
common?
game.
The Bears game too. But what do the first two games have in common is that they were at the beginning of the year where all of that focus and preparation was there, and now you're really kind of seeing them ad lib it, and it's not going well. And you have people that haven't done it before in every single facet of the game. And we all knew that was set up for failure because you have a first time head coach. And usually in those positions, if you have a first time head coach, you have strong coaching around him to
Yeah.
that way he's not trying to do everything his first year. And now it's just he's spread too thin. Um,
Especially with someone that's as inexperienced as Geronimo is, not saying he's not going to be a good coach. I mean, I know how both you and I feel about him, but
mhm.
he is inexperienced from a coaching standpoint, where he only coached 5 years before this, all of them at one position group. He was
One
the
position group, one team.
unofficial co-coordinator, but he really wasn't game planning. He wasn't calling the plays, where he was mostly focusing on the linebackers, specifically inside linebackers, which is the position he played. He wasn't focused on defensive line, defensive backs, offense. So for someone that's that inexperienced head coach, you really needed to set him up with good experienced coaches all around him. Where on the defensive side of the ball, which is his, again, it's his area of expertise, so maybe they felt like they could have gotten away with less, but having him with a first time coordinator who again only coached one position on the defensive side, defensive line, and Demarcus Covington. Uh, Outside of your current defensive line coach now, is it Montgomery, the guy from the Packers? I forgot
Mhm.
his name. But outside of him, your most experienced coach on the defensive side of the ball is Brian Belichick and Mike
Yep.
Pellegrino, who've been coaching.
um,
That's just on the defensive side. On the offensive side, you have Alex Van Pelt, who has been an offensive coach for a while, but you also have like as your head coaching experience. coaching assistant like you would have wanted to set him up with. You set him up with Ben McAdoo. Sure, he might be a coordinator or a QB guru, QB whisperer, but pretty much everyone knew at that position you draft Drake May, and maybe he's helping with the development right now. Again, we don't fully know, but he was one of the worst head coaches in the last decade. And there have been some horrendous head coaches in Brandon Staley, Josh McDaniels, who again is a great coordinator, but you didn't really set him up with anyone that could help assist him. Like what's his name? Pierce with the Raiders. He's been getting mentored with Tom Coughlin, who is a good coach. Again, I don't think Coughlin's on staff, but he's still helping with him. That's someone that he can rely on. Who does Gerard really have, especially since he burned the bridges with Belichick?
Yep, no, agree completely. And I think that the thing that's kind of scary about looking forward to what this game was and what's going to continue is what are they going to do? And we're going to kind of get in a little bit too much into the future, but I think this game was a big kind of eye opener where what are they going to do this year in the offseason to put themselves in success going forward next year? Because this year, as we said, was really all about getting ready for 2025.
Yep.
And they haven't. You haven't seen that growth that you saw in '93 with the Patriots with Bledsoe, where they started winning towards the end of the year. You saw with when Belichick his first year, yeah, they only won what, five
5 games.
games, but they were competitive in the large majority of their games, and a lot of those losses were one score games. And you saw the culture that they were building there. And yet
And
again,
with Belichick too is they were in such cap hell that they didn't have
a
53
full
men on the
roster.
roster.
Yeah.
They had, I think it was 49 or 51 out of
Hmm.
53, and that was carrying four quarterbacks as well. They didn't have the money to fund a full roster, so they were making do with what they had to while changing the entire culture of the team. Whereas here, you're signing someone who has only coached in this position with the same team. Pretty much most of the coaching staff, all of the front office knows this entire team. So you're not really making a new culture. It's one thing if you wanted to get rid of the Belichick culture and you go outside the building for the coaching and front office. But for keeping essentially everyone, there's not a culture you have to change.
Yep. No. So if anything, everything's gotten worse. And what are they going to do to make this better? And I think that's a big thing for these next games going forward. Is are they going to be able to turn the ship? Are they going to coach better? Are they going to be able to play better? Because you can't go putting this all on the players by saying, "Oh, we don't have the players to do this." This is the NFL. You can win each week
Yeah.
of the week, depending on how well coached you are, how more prepared you are. Not that you're going to win if you're a really bad team, that you're going to
Yeah.
win all those games, but you're going to be competitive. You're going to actually put a fight. You look at the Lions the first year under Dan Campbell. Gerard Mayo wants to compare himself to Campbell by saying, oh, he didn't do well in his first year, and he ended up doing well. But look at the games that they were in. Look at
Yeah.
how they played the games. Look at how aggressive he was. Look at this. At least he had a coaching philosophy.
Yeah.
Nobody knows what Mayo's philosophy is.
And with Campbell too, is he surrounded himself with great coordinators.
Yeah.
Ben Johnson on offense. I forgot the guy on defense, but both of them really good coordinators that have been in head coaching considerations the past couple of years. So he surrounded himself with guys he trusted. Granted, Ben Johnson from the Matt Patricia coaching tree,
Yeah.
but still, that's the one thing where we don't really know what we have in our coaches on this side of the ball. We
Hmm.
haven't, at least we haven't been impressed with Van Pelt so far. I mean, he's gotten a little better as the
And
season gone
the
on.
sad thing is that if you had to rate and rank what person you would say is doing the best job this year, it would probably be Van Pelt because it's not
Probably, yeah.
complete and utter disaster, like the defense is. It's not great, and you see all those penalties, but at least it looks better than.
Yeah. And again, too, going with that, I know we've talked about this a lot of episodes, but like Covington, it might not be his fault where he just doesn't have the experience and
Hmm.
he should have been, wasn't really put in a situation to succeed. Whereas if you look at, he doesn't have that experienced coach to lean on. And we're
Hmm.
seeing something similar in Baltimore where their defensive coordinator, he's young after McDonald went to Seattle. They struggled. So what did they do? They brought in Dean Pease to help
Hmm.
assist him, gain that experience, have someone to lean on. Covington hasn't had that, especially since this staff is so inexperienced on the defensive
Hmm.
side of the ball. So I would agree that Van Pelt is doing a better job. He had Covington has had some good games against Chicago. There have been some games where they were horrendous in the first half and they got better in the second half. But still, like it's not looking good. And I know we're supposed to spend this whole first half of the segment talking about the Miami game,
Hmm.
but this sidetrack is kind of important though because it's like you said, you want to get better, see what you have as the year goes on. Outside of this upcoming game versus the Colts, it's very unlikely they're going to win any of their last four games, unless the other team shoots themselves in the foot or they somehow extremely outcoach them. Two games against Buffalo, one against the Chargers, one against the Cardinals. But you want to see what you have. If you play better, you eliminate the mistakes, you see the talent you have, so that, like you said, you're building for next year, especially with a good quarterback on a rookie contract and 130 million in cap space. You want to use this offseason to step forward with the program where if you fail this offseason, you're screwed going forward. You
Oh
have
yeah,
some,
that's the biggest thing where they could be setting themselves back 4 to 5 years after
maybe
this
even more
offseason.
because you're not taking advantage of the rookie quarterback
Hmm.
contract.
Because if you think about it, do you trust the front office to be
No.
drafting the players, number one, signing the right players? I have no faith whatsoever because you look at this past draft, and yeah, I know it's too early to judge a draft right now, but you look at just what it is at first, and especially the wide receiver group, I don't think that's too early to start judging because you look across the league, and wide receiver is one of those areas where it doesn't take long to develop a wide receiver. They start playing well off the gate. And you look at McConkey with the Chargers and just what he's doing. And Eric had a tweet out this week just comparing the
So,
Patriots draft class compared to the Chargers for the wide receiver cornerback that they have there.
yeah, and the reason why I tweeted that specifically was the Patriots had the pick at 34, number two in the second round, and they traded back three spots with the Chargers. They traded pick 34 and pick 137, end of the fourth round, I believe, to the Chargers for pick 37 in the second round and pick 110. They used 37 and 110 to draft Jalen Polk and Javon Baker. The two of them combined have 12 catches for 89 yards and two touchdowns. That's all Jalen Polk, but still, uh, um, Lad McConkey himself, 49 catches, 698 yards, four touchdowns. And then I'm blanking on the cornerback's name that the Chargers drafted. He's now their starting cornerback with an interception, 30 tackles, and half a sack, where they drafted two impact players. Uh, Probably the best wide receiver in the draft so far, or production this year. Again, I want to say that he's going to have a better career than Malik Neighbors or Marvin Harrison Jr. or Roma Dunze or Brian Thomas. But up there, like receiving yards, he's right up there this year. And then, so you could have drafted a potential 1A type wide receiver as well as a starting cornerback with those two spots. Instead, they got so far two wide receivers that can't make an impact. And cornerback, as we've seen, is probably going to be a position that they're going to have to target this offseason in the draft as well. But the number of holes on this roster is starting to add up compared to what they had last year.
Yep. So that's the thing. Do you have faith in the player these guys picking the right guys and signing the right guys where this is your second year in a row where you're going to have a top five, top at worst top 10 pick
Yeah.
in each round, and I have no faith whatsoever because they couldn't pick every single pick that they had so far looks like it might be a failure,
Outside of
besides
Drake
Drake
May,
May. And Drake
but
May, I don't give them credit whatsoever
yeah,
because
anyone
they
would have
were
made that pick.
anyone would have made that pick if they tried to trade out of that. Robert Kraft would have said no, and they had no option. It was Drake May or no one else. They
Yeah.
had the easiest pick in the world. They're basically going to pick if they're number two, they were going to pick Daniels. If they're number three, they were going to pick May. Like wasn't
Yeah.
that hard. And if
Maybe May at two, just depend. Again, we don't know their philosophy. Some teams had May higher than Daniels, some had Daniels higher than May.
Yeah.
And again,
And I don't think so. I
wait,
think they would
wait,
have done what they would have done the safe thing and gone with what everyone was saying that Daniels is number two. I don't have any sort of conviction that they would have done otherwise.
But but
Um,
but again, we don't know.
we don't know.
It's also way too early to know who's going to have a better career.
Oh,
Like,
and that's the thing.
yeah,
I don't know. I think both of them are going to have good careers
yeah.
as long as Daniel still stays healthy.
Drake may too,
Um,
since he doesn't slide. But
that and then it also depends on the kind of the coaching and surroundings
yeah,
that he has. I think what we've seen from Drake so far is that he is a special player. There's things that he can do that you just a lot of quarterbacks can't.
yeah,
And a lot of the off-platform plays we saw it again this game, where he's got a really good feel for the pocket where a lot of rookies you don't and a lot he senses pressure really well, I feel like,
for
and
now.
for
The,
now.
the reason the reason I say that though is Mac Jones' rookie year, he had a great pocket presence.
I know, but
He
this is
felt
just different where he can evade it better so that way he's not getting hit as much.
That's fair,
um
but Mac Jones was able to step up in the pocket to avoid pressure too, and then that completely fell to crap year two and year
yeah,
three as he kept getting hit more and more and more.
I
And
have more
granted,
faith in May
this
and
offensive line is much worse than Mac Jones was his
yeah.
rookie year, so that's encouraging at least. But
And the fact that May never had a good offensive line in college, so it's not the
that's
first
fair.
time he's getting hit and pressured, so he's
Yeah,
seen it. So that was actually one thing that made me feel a little bit better about how his kind of team stunk at UNC,
yeah,
and he was kind of used to be in a bad situation, so you knew how he faced adversity really well. And he's just kind of cool as a cucumber. Whereas as you look at Jones, and he's not really. He's that kind of
yeah,
tennis player. He gets angry, gets distraught a lot. Where May is kind of very calm and collected, and I think that's why he plays so well under pressure. And he has those throws where he's like, "Oh my God, I can't believe he made something like that." But then he has those head scratcher
yeah.
throws where, like,
I
and
can't
again,
believe he threw that.
I can't believe he threw that. And
Yeah,
it's just that has to get tightened up. I think he can do it.
yeah.
I think it just depends on the coaching and surroundings around him that he could do it. So that's the other thing. Are you going to have the right guys around him going into next year and continuing to develop him? Are you going to actually have people he can throw to and people to actually block him? Because going into this offseason, we knew they needed an offensive line. What do? They signed a right tackle to play left tackle that didn't want to play left tackle. And then when he stunk at left tackle, he quit. And
Wait,
then,
but before you even go there, they signed a right tackle to play left tackle, and then early in camp had him only play right tackle,
yeah.
and then a week and a half before the season moved him to left tackle, which he never played in the NFL. And moving
Mhm.
from right to left is a huge adjustment. And then after a week and a half, he was horrendous. Again, not unexpected, and then
Yeah.
he quit. Again, he was put in a position to he was not put in a position to succeed.
Yeah.
And then they drafted a right tackle to play left tackle, and then played him mostly only at right tackle, where he hadn't played left tackle since high school,
Yeah.
and hasn't been well at left tackle because he's probably not a left tackle.
Hmm. And you knew this going into the year. And then you re-sign Michael Wayne, who was saying he's going to be my
And
right tackle.
also before you even get to Michael Wenyu, Vidarian Lowe, who has played better than expected, again, it's not
Not great,
unexpected.
but it's
He was the worst rated offensive tackle in the NFL last year.
mhm.
So he can only go up from there. He has been playing better than I was expecting, but to go into the offseason or going into last offseason, if anyone said Vidarian Lowe is going to be our starting left tackle and that's the plan, you would fire that guy immediately,
Yeah.
let alone give him the job.
Hmm. And then saying that we're going to have Drake May be starting by week 6, I think it was,
Yeah,
because week 5 was the Dolphins, so week 6. Um, knowing that, that's absolutely asinine. Just
yeah,
the offensive line setup that they had is a fireable offense alone.
yeah,
Knowing that that was the biggest problem going into this year, and also knowing that they wanted to play him now, knowing that they wanted to play him at least some point this year. So
yeah,
by saying that we're going to play him at some point, you have to have a better offensive line by then piecemealing it with this garbage that they put together.
yeah.
And you look at the line right now, you're just throwing things at the wall, trying to see if they stick.
And
Uh,
that's also something they did all camp too, is they kept trying all different
mm,
combinations. But one thing you need for an offensive line to be successful is cohesion. You have to know the person to your left and to your right, what they're doing, making sure that they're making the right assignment, that they're blocking the right guy. Whereas if they don't, you're going to probably pick up the wrong guy because you're expecting them to do something that, even if they're not supposed to be doing, you're expecting them to do that. And by having that incohesion all off season, all camp, this is something we called out too. Like you shouldn't be juggling the offensive line every single day, every single week in camp leading up to the final
Mhm.
week of the season. You should have, again, in the spring, okay, that's one thing. But by the time training camp started, by week 2, you should have had your starting offensive line and then your second string. And then maybe if someone's not working out, you pull someone in from second string to first string, but you don't keep juggling on when you right tackle, right guard, right tackle, right guard, city so left guard, right guard, left guard, right guard. You find your combination and then you go forward with it.
Yeah, no, City Cell right tackle. Like,
Yeah,
who actually he played pretty decent, I thought, at right tackle. But, um, and the other thing is every single offensive lineman besides Lowe has regressed,
yeah,
and Lowe now has kind of started regressing again. Um, and they haven't gotten better. They've
yeah,
gotten worse. And you look at last year, So was a bright spot in this team,
yeah.
and he was one of the best PFF rated rookie guards in the league last
Yeah.
year, and now he's
He
benched.
struggled a little bit with pass protection,
Mhm.
but he was serviceable and he was a good run blocker. Unlike Leighton Robinson, who was horrendous in pass protection. But City So
Yeah.
was a bright spot. And then again, I don't know why he hasn't been playing. I don't know if it's the new scheme, if it's the coaching, if
Hmm.
since they drafted Leighton Robinson, they want to say Robinson's our guy, so we're going to play him instead to show that we made the right decision. Blah 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 blah
Yeah.
blah. But
It's just I don't know. I just don't have faith that they're going to put the right players and draft the right players going into next year to have them in the right position. And then that's the thing too, where I didn't think this was possible, but I'm more open that it might happen. Where I don't think Mayo's going anywhere this year. I think that
yeah,
there's no possible way that that would happen unless there's a complete and utter disaster where, like players, there's a mutiny, and that's not going to happen because they all love him. But. I real think that there is a possibility where he could be canned next year.
yeah,
And I didn't think that was a possibility. I didn't think he was going to be this bad of a coach. I thought he was going to be
yeah,
a bad coach. I just didn't think it was going to be this complete and utter disaster that this team is.
yeah.
And I don't see it getting better. And they need to be getting better, and they're not. They're not ending the year the right way. And you don't go by him saying that he didn't think he was going to establish a culture in year one. That's complete bull. You look at the Chargers in what Jim Harbaugh was able to do there in what less than a year. You look at what other players, other coaches have done. You look at what Bill
Even
Parcells did.
Dan Quinn with the Commanders.
Dan Quinn with the Commanders. You look at Bill Parcells back in '93 when he came to the team. Yeah, they didn't have a complete winning record, but they started winning towards the end of the year. They had something there. They built
Yeah,
something there. You look at Dan Campbell with the Lions. Yeah, they didn't win that much, but they were building a culture there,
yeah.
and you knew what their team was. You knew what their identity was. The Patriots have no identity, and they're not
And they
well
didn't
coached.
have the culture that they needed to build.
Yeah.
If you're going with the same staff, essentially the same front office, the same players, re-signing all the same players, you're pretty much saying culture is not a problem.
Mhm.
Front office is not a problem. It's the head coach. And again, I understand maybe you're going into rebuild. You don't want Bill there because it's going to take 3 to 4 years, blah, blah, blah. Again, I
Yeah.
don't agree with it, but I can understand that assignment. But to say you needed to build a culture when you don't, that's just more and more excuse making.
Yeah.
It's not
And
taking
then
accountability.
No, 100%. And then the other thing with that is that you look at the difference between last year at this time and
Yeah.
this year. They were fighting. They were in every single game. They were disciplined. The offense wasn't good enough because they didn't have a quarterback,
Yeah.
and the quarterback couldn't make the plays. And
And
when they
some of the
actually put Zach,
receivers led up to where
yeah,
there were times where Mac had throws where even Bailey Zappi against the Chargers, where Bailey Zappi had to throw down the sideline to Tyquan Thornton, where hit off
mm,
his hands. If he caught that, he was in for a touchdown. They won 7-6.
yeah,
There's the game versus the Raiders where Mac Jones threw it 50 yards to Nelson Aguilar to get him field goal position to win by one, but he drops it, they lose.
mm,
Like they're against the Commanders last year, Mac Jones threw it to Juju on fourth down, where if he catches it, they're in field goal position, they win. He
mm.
drops it. So it wasn't just the quarterback. There were other execution issues, but it
Mm.
wasn't a coaching
It wasn't.
aspect.
Yeah, it wasn't mental execution where
Yeah,
you're making pre-snap penalties where it's happening time and time again. And you have national guys now coming out saying that this is the most undisciplined NFL team that's around. That is a bad thing that to be called. But
yeah,
if you're undisciplined, that's completely on coaching. That's not on player talent. We
yeah,
have spoken a lot about coaching right now.
yep,
We talk, so let's go quickly about Drake May and the rest. There's nothing really else to really talk about the rest of the team because stat wise, it wasn't good.
yeah,
They didn't play well. I think this Drake May, this it was tough for me to kind of grade this game for him because he was under so much duress and
yeah.
the line was so bad this game. It was just tough to kind of say how he played. I think through that, I think he played decent. But you again, he can't be making these turnovers. He had two turnovers, one fumble, one interception, bad interception, and bad
And the
fumble too.
interception too, the timing too, where if they get a touchdown on that drive, they
Mm,
can they're realistically in the game. They're down one
yeah.
score if they make the 2 point conversion. Where it's one thing if you're down by 20 or down by 30 trying to make a play, but that was one where it wasn't fourth down,
Yeah.
and you have a position. You're in position where you can actually get back in this game
Yeah.
realistically.
And I get you have a free rusher coming at you, but still you got to get rid of the ball and
Yeah.
throw it away or throw it at
Or
someone's feet or take the sack
yeah.
at that point. You can't go trying to make a hero play off your back foot, lobbing it up there. It's just not going to work.
Yep.
And then the fumble too. It's just he's having too many turnovers each week. And it needs to cut down, and that's something they have to work on with him at least in the off season. But I think he can overcome that.
Yep.
Anything else on him?
No, I think you at least see flashes. You see more good than bad plays from him, which is good, especially as a rookie. You'd like to see him tighten it up a little bit, but it also is tough with this offensive line, this receiving core, but he's making it work. Tight
Yeah,
ends have
I
been
think the biggest
productive.
thing too is that you're part of the reason I don't feel as bad is that the offense is all him.
Yeah.
It's all him.
Yep.
And he's trying to put the entire weight of the offense on him, and it's not going to work, which is why some of this is happening. So that's why I'm not completely upset about it.
Yeah.
It's just it needs to be worked on for next year is the big thing.
Yep. No, I agree. And then just the running attack is just in the offseason and training camp, they said we're going to be a run focused team. And outside of week one, they've been pretty horrendous against the run. Pretty horrendous running. And again, part of that might be the offensive line being bad. But Stevenson, again, another game where 8 carries for 13 yards, a yard and a half a carry, essentially. That's just not going to get it done. Gibson had some production when he played. Again, I like Gibson a lot. I think he should be getting more carries, but your top two running backs only getting 14 carries. Again, they were down by a lot to begin with.
Mhm.
But if you want May to have success and you want the offense to have success, you have to establish a run game first. I know some people disagree with that philosophy, but it really makes you a balanced offense where if they know you're going to be passing all the time, the defensive line can tee up on you. They can
Mhm.
call in blitzes, and that causes May to be under even more distress. You want him to be under less stress. You have your running game going, and then you work in the quick pass games, screens, quick slants, and to make them slow up a little bit, which is again something they haven't really done.
Yeah. All right. So wide receiver group, Douglas kind of led the pack, 5 catches for 62 yards. They're continuing to work him in more, which I like. Again,
Yep.
they did again. I don't know what it is, but the communication between Douglas and May needs to get better.
Yeah, there's
Um,
another one where he had Douglas for a first down and just throw was horrendously off.
mhm. Where he's expecting Douglas, I think, to kind of set in his route, and Douglas is claiming that he had just a slant route, and that's not one you set in. So
Yeah.
I don't know what May is kind of thinking there. But they
I have
need
a
to get
question
on.
for you, Kevin.
Yeah,
How would you compare Demario Douglas's production this year to last year?
I would say it's worse, but I don't know what if it actually is because he's played it every game. Where last year he missed a bunch of time for concussions.
Yeah.
So my gut would be I wouldn't be surprised if it's the same.
Yeah, it's pretty much on par. Last year he played in 14 games. Granted, he was knocked out of two of them, I believe, with concussion, but
Yeah,
49 catches, 560 yards, no touchdown this year in 12 games. So two less games, but probably
probably the same.
similar play time. 48 catches, 480 yards, one touchdown. So a little less in yards, but comparable with receptions and yards. So he'll end up having statistically more catches, more yards, more touchdowns than last year. But
Yeah,
that kind of shocked me when I saw that because I thought that he was having a pretty bad year, mostly because the game planning and the offense, whereas last year he was the main guy, but it's pretty much on par somehow.
yeah. And then Hooper had that really good touchdown, in kind of garbage time,
Yeah,
there for
he's been
them.
a pleasant surprise this year where he's had production. He's been a good target for May. Again, I want to say he should be a starting tight end in the league, but he's a good number two guy who can be productive, reliable when you need him to be.
Yep. All right. Anything else on the wide receivers before we hit defense?
Not really.
All right.
Booty, not much. When I had to start him in fantasy this week, only I think one catch for 9 yards or something like that. But
Yeah. All right. Defense, two sacks, Barmore, Schooler, and then Gonzo had that fumble return. Again, this we kind of already talked about this, but the defense not good enough. They got slaughtered against Miami, where again they're playing zone and they're getting killed.
yeah. If
And
you're
it's
gonna play zone
basically
against Tua, you have to get a pass rush quick.
yeah, and they didn't. And then this is basically the same type of offense that you faced last week, and the same thing happened
Yeah,
to you. It's basically almost a very similar offense, very similar skill cut type of players,
yeah,
and they didn't do anything to stop it. And it just seems like they were actually the defense looked even worse than the week before. They just looked lost and
yeah.
confused, and they didn't know where people were supposed to be. And then the bad thing is, and I said this on our group chat, is that when you have one of the lower broadcasts, because you're not a good team right now, so you're getting bad broadcast teams. And the color guy is saying before the play, like during the play, that the spacing on the defense is not right and they're not lined up in the right spot. And he's calling that out. And he's probably not the greatest guy in the world. And he's
Who was it? Mark Sanchez?
I don't even know who it was, but at this point, like,
Yeah,
but when you have that happening and like calling it out during the play, like they're not spaced right and they have no idea where they are, that's a bad problem. Where like he's not even coaching the team and he knows like they're not in the
yeah.
right area. Um, it's just they need to. I don't know what they're gonna have to do in the offseason. I feel bad for Covington. He's probably gonna get fired. But they're gonna have to do something. And I don't know what they're gonna do because their whole thing on bringing all these guys back was because they wanted to fit in that the scheme they played. And the problem is that none of these guys know how to coach up the scheme that worked these guys in.
It
So
was Adam Archuleta.
okay. Um, so then like what do you do where you signed all these guys because they fit in the scheme that you used to run?
Yeah.
And are you going to have a whole new defensive scheme where these guys are probably not going to fit because the whole thing with the Belichick scheme is that they knew exactly where the players had to be and what their strengths are and what worked with it. And clearly these guys don't. And are they actually that good of a player for a generic kind of defensive scheme? Probably not. Um,
Actually, interesting storyline to watch too is assuming Bill gets a job this year, does he take any of these coaches with him? I'm
mhm,
assuming Brian goes with him. Does Mike Pellegrino go with him? If
yeah.
Covington gets fired, does Covington go with him?
Hmm.
I still don't think. I think there has to be a scapegoat, and probably makes sense. Covington is just
Yeah.
because you don't want to go with another offensive coordinator week two or year two for a rookie quarterback.
Mhm.
If they do, what offensive coordinator is going to want to come to this disaster?
Knowing that the head coach might be fired after year
Yeah,
two, and then he'd be fired too. So,
yeah.
unless here's one kind of thing that was mentioned, but as just a kind of hypothetical situation I heard on the radio. It wasn't like a fact-based one, but they're
So probably
like
not going to happen.
probably not going to happen. But they were saying just a hypothetical that they were thinking of was that if the offense coordinator they hire could be someone where they could offer to say if this does not go well with Mayo, you would be the leading candidate for the head coach
I don't know
going
how you do
forward.
that. Unless it's the only one that makes sense to do that with is
Would be
Brian
Josh
Daboll
or Dable.
or Josh. But again,
Yeah.
I don't see how Kraft can go with Josh after his two. horrendous coaching stints where he made the exact same mistakes in his second try that he did his first try, and then that's someone else from the Belichick coaching tree. I feel like if you're gonna fire Mayo, you have to go a
Well, the thing that
completely
you see
different
though
direction.
with Kraft is that he likes to go with people he knows. So I could maybe see something like that happening more so with Dable than Josh, but
Yeah,
because Josh is probably going to follow Bill. But
probably.
we'll see. But that would be a nice kind of a funny kind of wrinkle where the coach that stabbed someone in the back ends up getting stabbed in the back. So that'd
Yeah,
be maybe a nice little storyline.
it's not gonna happen.
No, but that'd be actually kind of nice to have the high Dables though if it's coordinator because I think he's actually a really good head coach.
Yeah,
He's
he
just
is,
kind of
and he's
getting
a good
screwed
coordinator too.
by
Yeah.
in a good coordinator. He's getting screwed by the team.
There's no
Um,
way 2 years ago the Giants should have made the playoffs. They were not
yeah.
talented enough, and he
Mhm.
was able to get them there.
Yeah. All right. So three up, three down, real quick. My three up: Douglas, Mapu, and Gonzo. Douglas again, continuing to play well. Still there's those mishaps between him and May, but you had a big three for this game. This game kind of stunk, so going with him. Mapu, I think this is the best game probably of his career. I think he played really well. And
He's
then
had some
Gonz,
good games this year too. He's
yeah,
been much more productive this year than I was expecting, but it's
mhm.
showing why they liked him when they drafted him. And
No,
again,
exactly.
he had injuries last year, wasn't able to play as much, especially with the safety sets that they had, but
Mhm.
he's been playing well.
Yeah, and then Gonzo, when he was on Hill, it was really well against them. Again, that's the other thing where I don't think Gonzo should have been on Hill for this game. I think because you saw what happened with Marcus Jones on Waddle being killed because of just his
Yeah.
size, they really should have put Gonzo on Waddle and then have had Marcus Jones on Hill and then double him off the
Yeah,
top.
because Marcus Jones is fast too, where he can cover
Yeah.
him with speed. Again, probably not step for step because Hill is just that fast. But again,
Except last
especially
year they had him on Hill until he got hurt in the game. Um,
Gonzo.
no, they had Marcus Jones.
Yeah,
Because the game he got hurt was that game.
yeah.
And they had him at first on him, and he was step for step and was really good with them. So he could have been on with him, and it would have made more
Yeah,
sense to put him
and they
on
should have
then.
also switched it up where again maybe that was your game plan going into it, and then you see that Waddle is just killing Marcus Jones.
Hmm.
Again, Jones was in good coverage. It's just the height matchup was it's tough for
Hmm.
him to do in that situation. So maybe second quarter or halftime you switch it up, but they didn't really. I know Waddle didn't really kill you the second half,
Hmm.
but those are just some adjustments
Yeah.
that you would think that they would make.
All right, your three up.
Yeah, so my three up, I had Mapu first, Gonzo second, and then Austin Hooper third, where again, he was productive. Hooper, 4 catches, 59 yards, 1 touchdown. Most of those yards came on that long scramble touchdown, but he's just been a reliable tight end for you.
Yep. All right, three down. Durante Jacobs slash low, but both of the tackles. Really poor in this game, especially from a penalty perspective. And
Yeah.
this is probably Jacobs' worst game, I think, as right tackle. Kyle Duggar was really bad in this game, and I don't think he's been the same since he hurt his ankle. And he's also just getting exposed where he's not a coverage safety. He's not really great in free space. And he makes the same type of mistakes over and over and over again. And he's just better as a box safety. And I don't
Yeah.
think they're using him to his full potential. And then coaching was terrible. We've talked about this for
Yeah.
a half hour
No,
today.
I know. And for me, my three down coaching, everything we said earlier, offensive tackles, was it the first two drives, they had what, five pre-snap penalties, let alone holds or things like that. And then Duggar as well. So not a great game all the way around.
All right, Indianapolis Colts. Richardson.
One
Oh, yep.
news just for the Patriots that they surprisingly cut Michael Jordan. Um, he hasn't been good the last few weeks, but the reason why it's surprising is that he has your second most snaps played on the entire offense this year,
Mhm.
behind I believe Onwenu.
I think that
Um,
makes sense.
Yeah, but to go from starting this past week, starting the last 11 games to just not even being benched, but just outright cut is a little
Mhm.
surprising. Hopefully that means maybe Strange is coming back, he's healthy, or they're going to go with Robinson or City So or something, but
Mhm.
I don't really get those drastic decisions.
Well, I don't really either. But it also makes sense, but it doesn't really matter because
Yeah, that's
he's not
true.
going to make the team next year anyway. So
Yeah, that's
it
fair.
does probably easier for him. All right, Colts Richardson. He played better his first game after being benched, but then kind of went back to reality against the Lions. It was god awful. One of his kind of worst games, I think, from some
He's had
kind
a
of
lot of
stat.
bad
He's had
games.
some really bad games, but
Yeah,
39% completion percentage,
yeah.
which is I kind of unfathomable for an NFL
Eh,
quarterback.
I mean, his if I'm not mistaken,
I think his
his college completion percentage the last year he played in college, I believe, was like 51%. And the
yeah
NFL is tougher competition, so it kind of makes sense. Even though Dan
yeah.
Orlovsky said he showed one play of him like completing a pass, and it was like, I thought he's not accurate. He's not accurate, but
He's not. Yeah, I think before this, I think his completion percentage like was either in the high 40s or low 50s. It's like statistically one of the worst ones in the NFL history. Um, but I think recent NFL history.
probably recent day, like the
Yeah,
last 20 years.
yes, 20
His
years.
completion percentage this year is 47%. Again, that's after last Sunday, and
Yeah,
it's 50% for his career.
yeah. So 60 QBR. And 172 yards, no touchdowns. Offensive weapons, they got Michael Pittman is obviously the guy that they need to take
I,
away.
I I love Michael Pittman, but he's had such a bad year just because of the QB situation with Richardson
Mhm.
and Flacco. But Michael Pittman is a top wide receiver in this league, so you gotta. I mean, I would say that's someone that you can try and lock down, but it depends. What are they going to do there? Are they going to put Gonzo on one of their third wide receivers and either Josh Downs or Adonai Mitchell, who hasn't really played well this year? Alec Pierce is another weapon too, where he's actually starting to come into form. He was a second round pick for them a couple of years ago, and he's starting to be productive. I think he has close to 600 receiving yards this year.
Yeah. And
And
then defense,
they also have Jonathan Taylor too, who
oh, forgot about
uh,
Jonathan Taylor.
really good running back. I know he's not in the same form he was in 2021, but he's still rushing, I think, 700 or 800 yards this year, where he's the number one factor on that offense, and teams are game planning against that, and he's still being productive. So
hmm
if you're the Patriots, you want to make sure you stop Jonathan Taylor first so that Anthony Richardson has to pass. And then if he has to pass, probably want to spy on him because he's fast so he doesn't scramble. And then I would think you'd want to take out Pittman first just because he's such a good receiver, and then let Adonai Mitchell, who was very talented rookie, hasn't played much this year, hasn't been too productive. Again, QB situation has been crap, but he hasn't shown anything yet. Alec Pierce has been productive, but he's not like an elite one receiver. So I'd say try and take out Jonathan Taylor and Pittman and let Pierce and Mitchell and Downs beat you, but who
Yep.
knows what they'll do.
I don't know. I think this would be the same bear. The gameplay you use against the Bears would be the same thing that you do against
Yeah, 100%.
the Colts, where you have Schooler as the spy, and then you put Gonzo on Pittman, and then the rest is that you attack the run, and then you dare him to throw to anyone else.
Yeah.
And I don't think he can. So
Yeah.
I think it's the same type of thing where early kind of Lamar Jackson, where you would take away him running, you would take away the running game, and you dare him to throw. And that's what they need to do here.
Yeah.
Um,
And also too, since you're likely going to have a spy on Richardson, it might make sense to have Gonzo on Pittman so you don't have coverage over the top where you
mhm.
use that safety. That would be the coverage over the top on the
Yeah.
number one wide receiver. Instead, you use that not that specific person, but you use an extra man on the spy. So then Gonzo is on the number one. You have Jones on the number two, and other Jones on number
Mhm.
three, as an example.
Yeah. No, that's exactly why I said that. And then defense, they got Quiddy Pay,
Yep.
local Rhode
Nice Rhode
Islander.
Islander from Hendrick and Hawks.
And then DeForest Buckner is another good defensive player there. Prediction time. Colts are favored by 2.5 points. Over under is 42 and a half. I'm going to surprise a lot of people. I think Eric is too. I'm picking the Patriots, 17-10. I think this is probably one of their last winnable games that they have. And I know we've railed against the coaching the last half hour. I think that. if they dust off the plans that they had for the Bears and I just think Richardson isn't good. So I don't
Yeah.
think that he's going to be able to score enough.
And this is something that we both said before the draft too, is there's no way he should have gone number 3 or
Yeah.
even first round, but he was
Yeah.
just one of those combine special athletes where his
Yeah.
stock just rose significantly.
Yeah, I think this game is going to be more, again, the same kind of thing with the Bears. This game is going to be more about the Colts losing it than really the Patriots winning this. And you need all the wins you can get, so take advantage of it. 17-10 Patriots, I've got.
Yeah, I kept going back and forth, and I almost just switched in the last 30 seconds, but I'll go with my original prediction. I have Patriots winning 2010. Like you said, I think Richardson's just not a good quarterback. They do have weapons. I thought that in the Bears game too, that the Bears did, but the Patriots defense was able to really shut them down, and that's something that they could use a similar game plan against this offense who has a good running back, really good wide receiver, but a terrible quarterback. Again, I think Caleb Williams is much better than Anthony Richardson, but
Mhm.
this year hasn't really shown it. But still, part of the reason why I also think the Patriots are going to get the win is that the last time that they were embarrassed this badly was after they lost to Jacksonville in London. And then they came out the following week and were able to beat the Jets. Again, that was a game where they probably should have lost or it was close, but they're able to sneak out a win. I have the Patriots winning 20-10. But again, I wouldn't be shocked if the Colts win easy. But like you said, uh, unless there's unforeseen circumstances, this is probably their last winnable game. So you have to try and take advantage of it when you can. Start getting that good momentum going into the bye, and just for after this game, going into the last quarter of the season, and trying to build upon things for next year.
Yeah. All right. So everyone, thank you for listening. Make sure you have a good Thanksgiving. This will probably be posted either Thanksgiving morning or probably Thanksgiving morning. So maybe have this before you have your turkey when you're in turkey trot.
Or
And
listen to us when you're driving to some Thanksgiving high school football games.
or a relative's house that you want to be to. So make sure you subscribe, listen, and review. Subscribe, rate, and review. And then follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Pat's Pod and TikTok as well. Trying to get some TikToks, a few TikToks a week. And a couple of them have blown up. So thank you for everyone that have followed us there and like those as well. So talk to you guys next time.